what the ingredients are just from the name, which is good. You know all those ingredients are going to be in her cookies. So I'll let her take it away. Welcome. Thank you, Julie.
Hey, thank you. Great job, Steve. That was amazing looking pie. I want to make one. So I'm making cookies today, but before we get off the subject of fruitcake, if you do have a fruitcake that you are not inclined to eat and you're not a fan, slice it really thin and bake it like Raincoast Crisp crackers. And they're fantastic with cheese, like a little charcuterie and cheese board. They're really, really good. Fruitcake and cheese is a great combo. Okay, so I am baking, and I am a pulse fan. I put beans in everything. I put lentils in everything. My dad is a gastroenterologist, so he used to put oat bran in everything, and apparently turn into your parents. Now I put lentils in everything I can find. So one of my books, Spilling the Beans, is all about lentils and pulses and, chickpeas and beans and peas, all these great Alberta products that are great for the land. They're great for us. They're versatile. They're inexpensive. And split red lentils are one of my favorites for baking with because they're so neutral in flavor and they're so high in protein, high in fiber. But if you cook them, they taste like oats, and nobody, I promise, will know that there are lentils in their cookies. So these are, like Carrie said, oatmeal. What did I say? Rhubarb. Sometimes in summer I put rhubarb, in winter I put cranberries. Tonight I have Evans cherries from my parents' backyard that were frozen. So I'm going to use those. I used some dried cranberries in my pre-batch that I've eaten about half of while watching the show. So they're a thin, crispy cookie. They're made with butter and canola oil. So they're crispier on the edges. They're not stodgy. They're not cakey. They do not taste like lentils. Not there's anything wrong with that, but I promise no one will be able to tell that they're in there. So it's a small batch too. It's not a massive batch because we're all, at home with very few people. We don't necessarily need 24 cookies at a time. So this is going to start with a quarter of a cup of butter, nice and soft, and a quarter cup of canola oil, which I actually love in all my baking. I love canola oil in cakes and muffins and loaves. It's sort of my go-to cooking oil. It's very neutral, it's inexpensive, it's got a high smoke point, so it's great for, stovetop for baking. It also adds a lot of moisture to your baked goods, so it's great for things like chocolate cakes, but it's also great for cookies. So I added a little bit of butter as well, just for that buttery flavor, which is important in a cookie. So we've got butter and canola oil, and then brown sugar. This is dark brown sugar. You could use golden sugar. The only difference is the amount of molasses that's in there. The darker brown sugar will have a more molassesy flavor. And an egg, a good jiggly table. I pulled out my Christmas decorations, my old Christmas tablecloth from, I don't know how old this tablecloth is. It's got baking drips from every Christmas from like 1973. Now, if you want to add a little bit of zest, a nice local orange zest, you can add some. I've zested this one a couple times already, so there's a little bit left. But whenever I do orange or lemon zest, I add it at the beginning along with the sugar and the butter and oil. And that way, when you beat the two together, which you could do with an electric mixer, but I'm doing it by hand so that you can see, so it's not loud. It will release more of the flavorful oils from the grated zest. So fresh ginger I'd put in the beginning, orange or lemon zest at the beginning, whether you're making muffins or cakes or cookies or what have you. Oh, and vanilla, a little bit of vanilla. This is what my grandmother used to do when we baked together. She'd put a little bit in and then she'd put here. It's so funny not being able to hear people. I know you're all laughing hysterically right now. I'll just imagine. Okay, now we need some flour. So about 3/4 of a cup. You could add a cup of flour if you don't want them to be as spread as thin and crisp. But these remind me of my grandmother's oatmeal marmalade cookies that she always made, and she used jarred Robertson's marmalade, and they were delicious. They tasted like citrus. They had little chunks of orange in them, and we put chocolate in them sometimes. It was fantastic. So oats, flour and oats, you could use whole wheat flour if you like. Oats, of course, these are Highwood Crossing, fantastic oats. If you want to put barley flakes in there, you could. Now the lentils, these are split red lentils. And they cook really quickly. You don't have to soak them. They cook in about 10 minutes. They don't take as long as the bigger green or brown lentils. And when they turn kind of pale yellow, and often I'll just cook a bunch and put them in the fridge for a few days or freeze them. And then I can just add them to my muffins. Sometimes I add lentils to oatmeal, to old-fashioned oats while I cook them, or steel-cut oats, just to boost the protein and the fiber. But you can add them directly to sloppy joes or soup or anything saucy. I just kind of add little bits here and there, and it just sort of boosts the nutrients in whatever you're cooking. So I put some cooked red lentils in there, about half a cup once they're cooked, and a little bit of baking soda and a little bit of salt, about a quarter teaspoon maybe, because there's not a lot of flour and oats in there. If you want to add cinnamon, you could. Pumpkin pie spice, it's cookies, so you could really do whatever you like. Add nuts, add coconut would be fantastic. So I've got some halved Evans cherries, but cranberries would be great. Chopped rhubarb would be great. Just straight from the freezer. If it's frozen, you don't want to let it thaw, because if it thaws, it'll release its juices and make your batter kind of runny. And I've got some white chocolate. So there we go. It's a really simple dough to pull together. And if you're doing like a cookie swap, I know we're not doing our usual cookie swaps, but if you're leaving baking on your friend's doorsteps, or taking a package over to your family, you could freeze the dough, because it's like a drop cookie dough. You could freeze scoops of dough and bring the dough, or a log of dough. This would even work as a log, and let people bake their cookies whenever they need them. So, especially if people are living alone, you could bake a few cookies in a toaster oven. You don't have to bake the whole batch. And it's great, because your house then smells like freshly baked cookies. Uh-oh, where did Carrie go? Where did everybody go? Is everyone gone?
I'm still here.
Still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
My laptop is beside me, and everyone was gone. I'm in my kitchen talking to myself.
No, you totally are not. We're laughing with you. It's not good.
Are there any questions? Like, there are so many things you can add lentils to. Scones, biscuits or scones. Like I said, muffins or breads. I often add pureed white kidney beans to yeast breads or pizza dough, and it actually adds more fiber than if you used whole wheat flour, but it maintains that white bread texture if you like that. So I just use canned white kidney or navy beans, and if they're canned, they're a lot softer, so you can puree them in the food processor and add them to things. Now, everywhere I go, if I go to a party, which I'm not doing these days, but in the before times when I go to a party, I'd bring like a pie, and people would say, "Are there lentils in this? Are there beans in this?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. You tell me."
No, definitely something you should probably warn people about before they eat 10 of them.
One time, my neighbor across the street, I was bringing her all this food, and her husband was traveling. She had a new baby, and one day she's on the front step. She's like, "I don't know why the baby is so gassy," and I was like, "Oh, I think I know. It's because everything I've been bringing you has had beans in it." But the song, "Beans, beans, and musical fruit." The more you eat, the more you toot. It's the more you eat, the less you toot, because your system gets used to it. We need to change the lyrics. Look at this. Well, I can't see my camera anymore, but look at those cherry halves, hey?
Yeah.
So yeah, rhubarb or cranberries. Rhubarb and cranberries are very similar. They're both tart. And dried cranberries would work really well too, but the Evans cherries was like a last minute inspiration. When you take them out, I overbaked these a little bit, because as I was getting set up, I put them back in the oven for another minute, but they are actually quite dark, like my grandma's cookies. And I've eaten like 5 of them as we've been sitting
Okay.
here. Okay.
Oh, we do have some questions.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So the difference in lentils or like in the pulses, like does it make a difference in the cookie or in the difference that you want to add? Or like if could you use canned lentils or would you use just dried
You
lentils or does
could
it
use
matter?
canned lentils are brown or green lentils, so they're whole. Red lentils are small and they're split through their middle, so they're half the size, which is why they cook so quickly. So you could use canned lentils and puree them, and you see a lot of recipes with lentil puree, and it's fine, but they have a lot more moisture. The puree, it's like applesauce, so it'll give your cookie a cakey texture, and I like a crispy, chewy cookie. So I find that the red lentils, if you cook them, drain them really well, they won't add that sort of cakiness to your cookies. But you could use pureed lentils. Sometimes I use pureed canned lentils in brownies, or black beans are very common too. But
so you're cooking them first.
I'm cooking first.
Not raw.
You boil them. No, they're not raw in a cookie. There's not enough moisture to plump them up. But you can add them raw to your chili or your soup or your sloppy joes, anything that's got sauce. They'll sort of simmer right in the sauce and absorb the flavor of whatever they're cooking in. But these I just cook for about 10 minutes, just in boiling water, drain them, and you can keep the cooked lentils in your fridge for 4 or 5 days or freeze them. They freeze really well and thaw really quickly. Yes.
Okay. Another question. Could they be peppery?
Ooh,
Or
I know what you mean. Sometimes red lentils,
yeah.
they can be a little bit peppery. They don't, actually. They don't add a pepperiness, but it would be good if it was like a cinnamon cookie. These are really good in pumpkin pie too. So someone mentioned pumpkin pie today. Pureed and reddened with a pumpkin, really good in pumpkin pie. But yeah, if it's a spicy cookie, it would work well. I've never noticed that peppery flavor, and I know what you mean, but I've never noticed it in a cookie. There's so much going on in a cookie that it doesn't come through.
Okay. And the size of scoop that you were using, is that
I don't know what size this is. Let's see. Does it say?
well, looks a little bigger
Does it
than.
say on it? It's like the size of an egg.
Oh, okay.
If you're like, I have a smaller one, and this is the one that I use more often. It doesn't say what size it is, but it's about, the scoop is like the size of an egg. If you're.
We'll go with medium. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they're so great. It makes you feel super chefy. So those bake for 12 to 15 minutes. You want them to be a little bit more golden because they're crisp. If you want them to be chewy, don't overbake them. Make sure they're golden around the edges, but still sort of soft in the middle because they'll firm up as they cool. And if you like a crispy cookie, bake it a little bit longer. Like Steve was saying, ovens vary, whether it's on convection or not convection, and just between brands, and they don't always hold their heat. They're not always super accurate. So knowing what to look for is really important.
Good. And then so for, I guess, local lentils or Canadian lentils, you can find them pretty much in any grocery store.
Yeah.
Just look for like the little product of Canada label.
Yeah.
And I think, you're doing okay for local there.
They're big prairie crops. Saskatchewan's the #1 exporter of lentils. So they're huge across the prairies. Chickpeas grow more out east, and same with white kidney beans and navy beans. But beans they're so great for the farmers because they fix the nitrogen in the soil. So they're good for crop rotation and good for us. So we just need to get used to using them more, I think.
Yeah, well, and I love recipes like this that you can use them. I mean, it doesn't make it healthier, but it makes it healthier.
Well, and people are always, it does, because you're putting lentils into your muffins, or a little bit here, a little bit there, throwing a handful into your soup, and at the end of the week you've gone through half a jar of lentils. Just working it into your diet, getting into the habit of adding them, I think is a good habit to have.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Is there any questions? We have a time for more questions, but
yeah, or compliments. Compliments.
Lots of compliments. Yes, that was great. Very neat. Well done. Very good. Yeah.